This is all about the song.
Okay. Episode number 2. Thank you so much to everybody that listened to my first episode with Alex Pulik. Also, everybody that reached out afterwards and sent a message through the Facebook page or the website, or sorry, not the website, but the email, which is allaboutthesongpodcast@gmail.com. I really appreciate all the feedback I got. It was really nice. I know I've done this podcast for people to listen to, but the fact that actual people listen to it is just, I don't know, it's just really cool. I really appreciate it at the end of the day. So thank you for everyone who listened to it and everyone who shared it or retweeted it. It was all, I appreciate every single one of you. And now we're on to episode number 2. A lot has happened between these 2 episodes. Once episode 1 was ready to go, it took a little bit of time to figure out how I was going to do it, how I was going to put it out. I built a website with squarespace.com. It is easy, but it still takes a little while to figure it out. And I'd like to say thank you to Juliana Ianniziello and Alessandro Colorasi for guiding me through really figuring out what it is I was doing with a website, as well as posting a podcast on iTunes and Google Play. Once I got, out of my head and realized how to do it through YouTube, it was really easy. I'd like to make a point to mention to anybody, if you're ever thinking about doing a podcast, please send me a message. I will help you out now that I have gone through learning just about everything to put it out. I'd love to share the information if you have an idea for a podcast for yourself. Right now, I'm in Manila in the Philippines. I'm here with currently 3 of my friends, Carlo Cruz, Paul Yonia, Mark Mamaliti. We all went to high school together. We're waiting for 2 more friends to arrive, our friend Kavi Gupta and Joanna Stetzowitz. We're doing a bit of a 30th birthday trip. And we all met in high school, in the 9th and 10th grade. And thinking about it now, that was when we were 15. So, half a life ago. To be doing such interesting things is really, really awesome. I won't lie, it's so cold in Toronto. It's really nice to be away. Not to brag, but it's like 30 degrees. And we've just been traveling around, and it's been a really great experience so far. We've only been here for 2 days. We flew. It took like 20 hours. So now that we're settled and we're on some sort of clock, we're really ready to go. While we're here, I am going to be interviewing Carlo Cruz and Kavi Gupta for 2 separate podcasts. We might put it together as one, and to discuss their careers with songwriting and musicianship. And I'm really looking forward to those. I'll be recording them next week, and you'll hear them in a couple weeks. So stay tuned. I also wanted to mention, with my own music project, Good Luck Shop, I released a new single, and it's called Evolve. Evolve is available on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud. You can look it up on Spotify. If you don't mind listening to it, it's a great song. I'm really proud of it. And tell me what you think. It's, as a songwriter, it's always really cool to release new music, and I'm really excited about it. My first song that I released was called Far. And you learn so much with putting out songs, how to do it, where it goes, how people receive it. To do it a second time, you get to take all the information you learned from doing it the first time and learn from not mistakes, but things that you did that you would change for next time. I am also, there's a new video for Evolve coming out, and it'll be out in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that too. Now, while I was doing this project and I was recording these songs, there were certain people that I loved to research and look up on YouTube and Facebook in particular, to see what they were doing with their career, to not only offer insight, but also inspiration, to keep you going for those days when, why write a song? It's so much work. Like, why are you doing it? And there are certain artists that I gravitate towards, looking up and seeing what they're up to. And Luke Roes, for me, is one of those people that I contemplated calling on many occasions to ask him to go for a coffee or a beer and just basically say, how are you doing what you're doing? His band Ivory Hours has released many albums. Currently, they just released the album Dreamworld. And since I recorded this podcast with Luke, they've gone out and done a cross-Canada tour, which from photos and speaking to some of the band members, including Luke, seems to have gone really, really well. And I'm very happy for him that it has. Luke always seems to be onto something, whether a new song, a new album. He really, for me, he embodies what it is to be a musician in 2017. He's an all-in-one shop. He does everything. It's really cool. I really enjoy the way that his band has progressed throughout the years. And my brother Regan booked them a very long time ago to play one of their first shows in Toronto once they had moved back to London, Ontario. That was about 5 years ago, and since then the band has taken they've really honed what it is that they're doing. They're a thrill to watch. Luke is an incredible guitar player. The band has always been very energetic and tight, and I was really glad to, as I wanted to do, sit down and talk to Luke about the band. It's a very compelling story, and I really believe of all the musicians that I will have on it, I'd like to have Luke on again and continually check up and see the progress of the band and how they're doing. Ivory Hours is that up-and-coming band. They just did a master class with the Junos, and I really feel like that tap on the shoulder for them will come sooner than later. So, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 2 with the lead singer and guitar player from Ivory Hours. Here is Luke Roes.
Late night, walking on my own, street lights, smiling in the cold. At peace, the city sleeps, so quiet I can hear it breathe. Sunrise, nipping at the heels at dawn, and the pale moon's gone. I see them float through the trees, white clouds like they're coming up from a dream. A dream, a dream, like they're coming up from a dream. A dream, a dream. We're living in a dream world, so don't forget it. We're living in a dream world. We're living in a dream world, so don't forget it. We're living in a dream world. A warm sun licking at my tears, old songs swimming in my ears, shiver running down my spine, feel my body disappear. God's a word that's abused, too tired from overuse. The divine is inside of me, waiting in the wings to be woken up from a dream. We're living in a dream world, so don't forget it. We're living in a dream world. We're living in a dream world.
first time I heard about your band was I was in the car with my brother, and he had just got back from university. I guess this might have been 5 years ago. And he got in the car, and he's like, you got to check out this song. And it was Lithograph.
Oh,
and
nice.
I was like,
That's a deep cut.
Yeah, and it was cool because he's like, yeah, this is a really cool band. And he knew you through Tom Rosini, who's your roommate at Queens. And he heard this song, and he's just like, I really like it. And I'm kind of, because your brother, like, I was dismissive. I'm like, whatever, cool, all right, whatever. And he put it on, and it was just such a mature song. Like, it had it had something to it. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, you started, that was when you were in Vancouver.
Yeah, well, that song I think was written in Kingston, actually. Yeah, and your bro came up there. Wasn't he selling spices around that time?
He was selling he was selling spices. Yeah. So now, okay, so you started. You're from London, Ontario.
Yes, originally from Saskatchewan, then grew up just outside of London, and then went to school in Kingston, and that's where I'd been playing guitar for quite a bit of time, but really got into the songwriting stuff when I was at school there, and just not going to school and just playing music. And so before we moved out to Vancouver, that the summer when I finished school, that's when I started writing a bunch of stuff, and my friend Nick came over from Vancouver, and we started working on those songs.
What was now before we get into that, what was the thing that got you into the music when you were younger?
I honestly don't know. I just loved it. Like when I had a Walkman, and I would just like feast on whatever tapes I could find. My parents had like a bunch of, I don't know, bootlegged stuff that I don't even really know now what I was listening to.
Right.
They're probably the only identifiable band is like AC/DC or something. But yeah, so I used to just get whatever I could get my hands on, and it wasn't until high school that I started actually playing it, but I always was a huge fan.
Was guitar your instrument of choice always?
Yeah, I guess that is what I connected to. My parents tried to get me to play piano earlier on, but I blame the piano teacher for being very uninspiring. So
I know.
I didn't want to practice, row, row your boat or whatever. I actually just wanted to play Mission Impossible, the theme song.
Yeah. Everybody does.
Which she wouldn't teach me.
Well, it's funny. I started playing on guitar too. I wish I had piano lessons, because even just watching someone express them like a song idea on the piano, and they're able to kind of play left hand, right hand, and encapsulate an entire idea.
It's the best instrument there is.
Yeah.
But hands down, and I wish I stuck with it. It takes, different kind of inspiration, I guess, to
Well, it is.
keep at
And
it.
I mean, for guitar, now did you start acoustic or electric? What was the first?
I think it was electric, but I didn't really truly get into it till I had some pals in high school who were getting all into learning Metallica and Led Zeppelin songs and stuff like that. And then there was like a bit of a competitive kind of aspect to it of being able to master some of those songs. So
It's interesting
into
how that type of competition between high school friends can just expedite your process. And it's nice when you have a competitive edge, when someone can do something you can't. There's all of a sudden an onus to learn.
yeah, I like it. I think that's a nice thing about music I've never really connected with sports, but the competitiveness, I guess there is that aspect in sports where, you genuinely like want each other to succeed and push boundaries and stuff like that. And that's the more like, beneficial part of competition, I think, if you can, not, I don't know, be mean about it.
No, I still compete with my high school friends on music stuff. And I mean, we've kind of graduated to being very encouraging. We were always very encouraging about it, but I think we now identify with what it is. And it's like, hey, I released a song. Hey, I released an album. This is what I'm working on. And you hear it and you're like, okay, all right, I got to not go out with my friends. I got to work on a song kind of thing.
Yeah, and how you can push yourself. I think that's such a nice relationship to have with people. It's just that like really pleasant kind of push to be better.
Yeah. Now, you went to Queens. You went to, where is Queens? Kingston, Ontario.
Yeah, in Kingston.
What were you originally setting out to study there?
I started off in philosophy is what I was aiming at. I'm kind of glad I didn't stick around in that, and I switched to engineering for second year, and that's what I ended up finishing. not exactly, obviously I like music a lot more. I haven't worked a day in the engineering field, but I don't know, I like the analytical aspect of it, and I always kind of connected with sciences and stuff, so
That's cool.
yeah.
And then the guitar, just playing guitar.
Yeah, all the time. I don't know why, but I just really, really liked it. And I went through some rough times at university and stuff, and music was always the thing that helped me get through that, and how I kind of process things emotionally is through music.
Did you start the Ivory Hours there?
Yeah, technically, we originally had called ourselves Sweet Thief, and ended up changing the name. But that's original drummer Nick came over from Vancouver and started working on them with me, and then we kind of pieced the original lineup together. And that's obviously undergone some changes over time as well. But
You have a friend who's a drummer from Vancouver now. After university, you went to Vancouver.
yeah, and then we kind of followed him back, and the original bass player Graham was from Vancouver as well. I was kind of looking for an adventure and pretty frustrated with where I was at after school ended, so I just wanted to take off, and that's where we went.
Now, your sister Annie accompanied you there?
Yeah, and she followed shortly after, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Now, what was the Vancouver music scene like?
We were pretty, new to just being music people at that point, so I don't think we really, used the scene as much as we should have, but I think, like, it had some influences on us in that it was, like, a lot of, like, that indie pop kind of sounding stuff, and there are a couple bands there who we still talk to, and other than that, I know I spent a lot of time writing there, and I wish I had gone out and seen a lot more shows and stuff while I was there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you're creating. It's hard to see what everyone else is doing at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And it just was just learning about so many aspects of what it was to try and make a career out of the thing, too, that kind of bogged me down a bit. But, every time I go back now, I still really like Vancouver, and I think they've got a really cool thing going on.
Now, how long were you there for?
Just a year.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You did a video out there, a stop frame animation video.
Yeah, that was the first one of those that we did, and quite the undertaking, but
yeah,
it's a pretty neat medium.
It's I've also fallen victim to the, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did a stop frame animation video? And how long did it take you to do?
That one we did over a bunch of weekends. That actually took some time because we were experimenting. We had no idea how to do it. Bass player Graham was piecing it together, and he was dealing with the technical aspects of it. And just as you go through those projects, you invent new kind of ways that you can use the medium. It's like the cheapest way to get some really cool effects, but you start to think in that world and what a certain kind of movement will get you a certain kind of effect, which is cool.
Yeah, it seems like such an easy thing when you start, and then
yeah, it's actually not hard, but it is
tedious.
It's just endurance, and especially once you start a shot, like when we ended up doing that for the later video, some of the shots were 2.5, 3 hours long, getting body painted, and there's no stopping in between there. So
no, and you're there once you start.
Yeah,
the setup is forever.
Mm-hmm.
So you did. Now, did you do a full length or an EP while you were out in Vancouver?
We did an EP that we had recorded in Ontario and then brought out there, and we had a dude who was helping us kind of work on that. I finished mixing that stuff, and then we put that out, I think, in October of that year, and started playing a few shows and stuff. We weren't really leaving the province there. We were just kind of playing around Vancouver. And then started working on new music again. And all through that time, too, I was learning how to record my own stuff as well. So some of it is not the highest fidelity. But
yeah, but you can hear in it that you're onto something. And one of the things I really enjoyed about it was that, you could tell that you were going somewhere with it. Like you had a thought in mind. It wasn't all over the place. You were writing good songs.
I fooled you then, didn't I?
You did. But it's also I know it's kind of tough to look back on your old work and give it its merit when you're always looking to do something new. But, it really impressed me. And
I'm glad you liked it. I mean, I
Yeah.
was very, very dedicated to it at the time. Retrospectively, yeah, you've got all kinds of thoughts about it, but
and all the time in the world to make your first album.
yeah, for sure. And it's just kind of neat because I've gone through so many different phases. Like in that time, I was like addicted to these like kind of finger picking things on guitar. That's kind of where I had ended up. But I, by the end of school, there listening to all this folk music and stuff, and then kind of wanting to adapt that to a more like rock kind of environment. And then since then, I've gone on to like synthesizers and other crazy shit. I don't know.
Well, and it's maintained the same sound. Like you can tell that it's from the same as the melodic points of your music have changed. Like you can tell they're still coming from like the same place in a sense.
I'm glad to hear that because it's definitely undergone some changes.
Now, from Vancouver, you came back to London.
Mm-hmm. We actually lost my younger brother that year, which was devastating, and so Annie and I did this really long trek home, kind of figuring ourselves out a little bit, and we went all the way up to the Yukon and came back to Ontario and kind of set up and took a bit of time to kind of get grounded again, and then thought about rebuilding the band because we had left the other two members there and parted ways with them. So yeah, that was the next chapter.
What were your first steps in coming back once you were ready to play music? I'm sorry, I didn't know your brother died.
It's okay. Yeah, it was a while ago, I guess.
When you came back, when you're in a new place, did you come to Toronto first? Did you start in London? What were your first ideas with how you're gonna kind of resurrect your music?
We needed some new people, and we were, our family's in the London area, so that's where we kind of set up shop again. I set up a new studio space in my parents' factory, which I've had some fun history with that. It's this huge old cookie factory, and so over throughout high school and university and stuff, I had set up a bunch of different rooms at different times in that place. So set up shop in there, and then it was just kind of hunting around for people, and eventually stumbled upon Tom and Chris.
How now? I mean, you've got a killer rhythm section, and they're both excellent players. Did you know them before, or was this kind of did you kind of put an advertisement in the paper sort of thing, or was it you kind of had heard that these guys were around?
I didn't know them at all, and they didn't know each other, even though they lived down the street from each other, which was kind of a funny thing. So, but I'd had a couple people kind of looking around for me. We tried out a couple people over time, but then with Tom, who came on board first, our friend Renato, who's a drum teacher in London, he had taught Tom, and Tom was working with him at the time, and he said, "I've got somebody who I think will work for you." And Tom and I clicked immediately, and then the bass player was kind of the harder item to find, and it just happened that I went to the blues night at London Music Club that they used to run every week, and Chris had just got back from LA a week or two before. He had finished up school there, and
for bass.
No, actually for guitar, but he's just a genius. So he happened to learn bass while he was doing that.
I'm surprised because he's such a bass player.
Oh yeah. I've learned so much from Chris in that sense, is that when he's playing that instrument, he is the embodiment of that instrument. When he's playing guitar, he's fully a guitarist. It's kind of neat to see him swap mentality like that.
And it is a mentality. That was one of the things that I was a guitar player turned bass player, and it took years for me to figure out that they were, even though it was kind of like a similar instrument, an octave lower with two less strings, it was a whole different mentality. You're playing a new role, and it's an important one, and it's like being a defenseman on a hockey team. Your objective is not to score goals. It's a whole different, you're holding back, you're holding down the fort.
Yeah, for sure. And I find I play bass now too, and I just love I love grooving, man. I almost like it in a jam scenario. I'd rather play bass than guitar because I don't know. When I was younger, I liked to like solo all the time and try and see how flashy I could be or whatever. But now it just feels so good. I mean, having played drums too, to just like sit into a pocket and just like play. So,
well, I gotta commend your band because the last time I saw you guys play, which was at the Horseshoe Tavern, I guess about a month ago, you had an additional guitar player on stage. But when the majority of the times that I've seen you in the last 3 years, it's been a 3-piece. And one of the things I was so amazed by is the amount of music that you guys were able to cover between the three of you, but also almost the respect to the music by allowing everyone to shine and really always have the song as like the important star of the show in a sense.
thank you.
It's
I'd like to say it was that well thought out, but it was so much out of necessity and not, not having.
Totally. Well, I saw you guys play a show at Parts and Labor when you played with backing tracks.
Oh, okay.
And it was cool, but I think I said to my brother at the time, I was like, that worked, but
Was it just Annie and I that time?
yeah,
then?
it was Annie, you, and
Oh, so I was
backing
playing
tracks.
off of a looper pedal that time too, which was kind of fun in its own way, but definitely is not as inspiring as having real people on stage with you.
Well, you could tell that you guys were in transition,
Yeah.
and it's commendable to do whatever you can to play a show, no matter what the situation is.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people wait for the perfect opportunity to get all the perfect players and everything like that, and sometimes the waiting game can just kind of get you stagnant, and it's hard to get going again.
Yeah, I'm learning that. I mean, if I was now to start a thing, I would, probably go about it differently because after all this time of playing all these shows and stuff, I've met a lot of people and have learned so much about it. But at that point, when you're so new, it's just so important to get out, play the shows, whatever they are, and meet the people and just get exposed to it. So, yeah, we were just playing.
That's cool. Now, when you came back to London, one of the things I noticed is that it just seemed like a prolific outburst of videos, content, and you prepared for your first album, or that with the new lineup. Now, it also saw the departure of your your sister, Annie, in around that time. You guys did like a West Coast tour.
Yeah.
And how was that like for the first time touring?
Touring was a lot of fun. I've always loved traveling. I've done a million road trips at this point too, and that comes pretty naturally to me. That was a tougher thing for Annie to be away for those periods of time, and that was again a good thing to figure that out early on, and know that touring was just not a thing that she wanted to do.
Yeah.
Even though you can be incredibly passionate about the music, but it's just a hard life to be out and staying up till 3 or 4 a.m. every night and then getting up and then driving, to another place. And sometimes not the most savory of people or, living conditions. But to me, that's, a bit of an adventure as well. So.
Absolutely. Now you released videos, most of them being recorded in your parents' warehouse.
Yeah, a lot of them were done at the factory, and that was all of that video stuff became possible because just through our network here, we met our friend Alex Stevenson, who's done almost all of our video stuff up to this point. He's just super talented, and he's obsessed with film. So he's leapt at the opportunity to work on stuff, and I've just learned an incredible amount from working with him, and now just watch movies in an entirely different way, which is so fun.
It's a different medium than music, but it's at this point in time they're hand in hand in the sense of presenting music with a visual, and it's when you're recording and doing all these things, sometimes you can't do it all. It's interesting. I found it interesting to work with people in film, and you're right. You get to see a lot of things that you think are effortless, and it takes so much work
and it takes a crew, and I'm still just learning because our budgets, are finally becoming actual budgets once in a while, and then you still we're not nowhere near where you've got the proper crew of like director, DP, and then, you know, you've got a gaffer and all these people who, there's one guy who's just supposed to deal with light.
Yep.
You know, blocking light, shaping light, diffusing it, and that's your job, just that one thing. And from, you know, the outside, that seems like a ridiculous thing. Like, why don't you just turn the camera on? But it makes an amazing difference. And when you can appreciate what that does, it's, I don't know, it's just really, really cool.
So your album that you released, Morning Light, that was what you were gearing towards, like video-wise and stuff like that. Where did you record the album?
At EMAC in London is probably the bigger recording studio there, yeah.
Did you do it over a period of time, or did you do just drums there, or
no?
what
That
was your
was
process
super quick. So that, oh yeah, because we had done, we won a radio contest in London there that let us do the Mary EP there, and then we really liked working there. Dan Broadbeck came on board because he had heard that EP and just really, really wanted to work with us. So we got him in to co-produce on that. And we did it all at EMAC, and we did it really quickly. I forget, it might have been like 5 sessions or something like that.
Was this your first time working with a producer?
Yeah, it was. Well, I guess, I mean, on the Mary stuff, Matt Grady also co-produced on that as well. So I guess not the first, but yeah. Interesting.
What did you like? Do you like working with a producer?
I do, and I've gotten better at it. I think I still got a lot, you know, I still could do more to adapt to that process. I think I haven't done one where it's just like full relinquish control and like give it to a producer, because I don't know, I'm just like so ingrained in the process early on. I find it really hard to do that, and it can get incredibly expensive is the other thing, that I just haven't had the opportunity to do that. But yeah, I like having someone's input that you trust, and they can give you an objective look at what you've done. And you know, with Dan, it's not like we don't disagree very often at all, but it's just really nice to be like, does this suck?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. It's gone then. Oh, does this suck? No, it's good. Okay. We keep that then, you know, and just have somebody to filter that is great.
It can become kind of hard to know when you're in the thick of it what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, if you're in a flurry of overdubs and you're just going nuts, and sometimes it's fun to do that, and other times you got to be like, curb it, you know? It's like, this is enough to carry the song. You don't need another part.
With that album, so you released the singles on Dreamer, Warpaint, I Won't. What did you think about those songs? Was there a song on that album that stuck out to you as one over another, or?
I can't say that there's any in particular that, I guess at first actually I kind of thought about Warpaint as always being the single from that album, I guess. I liked a lot of the songs, but I thought that was the catchiest of them. And I was like hooked on those little delay riffs and stuff. I really liked that at the time. But other than that, like, I really liked, like, Young and Beautiful was one of my favorites off that album, even though I knew it wasn't going to be an incredibly popular song. It just had like kind of a cool, like, alt rock vibe that I really liked.
How do you go about selecting a track listing for an album?
Like, as the order of the album?
Thinking about like singles and songs that may not be a single but that you love it. Like, what's your process in thinking about a track listing?
For that, I used to not think about it whatsoever, because for this, I'm always doing everything. So like, you know, some things I've kind of brushed over and not thought about. For the latest album, I actually, for the first time, thought a lot about track listing and the way that it flowed from song to song. And then when I sat in on the mastering session too, just as to like how we created the transitions and stuff. So that was kind of a fun part of the process. For the last one, though, you know, in general, the idea is to front load at this point. Like, not a lot of people listen to a full album. So you put the best songs at the front, or what you want people to hear, and then get into the deeper cuts later on. But yeah, like I say, for the last one too, just like
having it kind of the energy like flow through the album and it feel like an experience rather than, just a jumbled playlist is kind of a neat thing.
Right. Now, when you released this album, how did you feel about it? Like
The latest one?
or
Morning Light?
no, Morning Light.
I was into it at the time. Again, it happened really, really quickly again. That's been a thing with us, is just like we're touring. Oh, we need an album now. And I'd been writing a little bit, but then it's like slam songs together, get them out kind of thing. And then there'll be a deadline that I set. It's not like we have to hit it, but getting that out in time for the summer is what allowed us to, put it into those contests and win the Edge thing and win that. So it's like, it's good that we moved so quickly, but retrospectively, I would have liked to spend more time, I think, at it. And I would prefer more overdubs on that album. But I was just like, wanted to be very true to us. We didn't want to play the backing track. So it's like, what can we reasonably pull off as a 3-piece? So it's pretty stripped back.
That album feels like a 3-piece album, but what I really enjoyed about it when I guess it was about 2 years ago, I saw you guys play at the Horseshoe, and you felt, I guess you had been touring a lot at the time, but you guys looked seasoned. And something I saw out of you guys that was different that time in comparison to the times I had seen you before was that you guys just looked like you knew what you had. And it was almost like the way I was thinking about it at the time was it's like you were, if you were a stand-up comedian, you knew your jokes were going to get laughs.
That's right.
And it was really cool to see you guys take an audience that was there to see you, which is always a
nice thing.
turn. Well, that's a corner turn when all of a sudden you start to look out in an audience and like I don't know that guy. Who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, that is a nice feature.
And you guys started to have people dancing at your shows around that time, and people got into it. And that must have been pretty cool to experience.
It's still cool. We're still, we're building in a lot of places too, and it's funny because my mom still likes to catch as many shows as she can, and it's like it's great to see the fam, but it's huge when you see people you like have literally no connection to who really, really like the music, and that that makes you feel like you're catching on in some sense. But yeah, that's what I kind of miss about, we used to play out almost every single weekend, just playing whatever show, just making sure we were out there and meeting new bands and meeting people and stuff like that. Now we're kind of more in, touring in concentrated chunks and stuff like that, a little more strategically, which is nice in its own respect. But, our chops were at like an all-time high at that time, for sure.
It was cool, and I remember feeling that way for the first time, and I guess that's maybe why I noticed it, because it's like that's such a thing you get only a number of times in your life to all of a sudden like realize that not only are you good at something, but that people are like they think you're good at it too.
Yeah.
And it was great to watch you guys on stage just be like, oh, if that song fucked you up, get ready for this. And you could tell that you guys were taking it 9 rounds. It was great. It was really cool. So the album did well, and it got you guys noticed. You were able to do a lot of different things, and you had mentioned that you were placed in a couple contests that you had won, and you had placed 4th in with the CBC Music Spotlight. Mm-hmm. What was it like to be noticed on a national level like that?
That was nice. Yeah, of course, it makes a lot of things easier. Some of the tour booking easier. Got some other opportunities as well, just show wise and whatnot. Yeah, and it's tough. Like, if we didn't win those things, we'd still have just like kept on grinding and do what we were doing. But then after you win it, you look back and you're like, how could I have existed without this leg up? But you just keep doing it. But it definitely helped quite a bit just to have some like cash to help build, more of a home studio thing, just to like ease up some of the touring costs and all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of help.
Now, not to nerd out too hard, but I do notice you have a Kempler amp.
Yeah.
You've made the change.
I have switched to the Kemper, yeah. I used to have a crazy pedal board, and I was dancing around and trying to sing at the same time and stuff. So, especially with the latest album, there's just a lot of
dynamics with the guitar and different tones and all this kind of stuff. So it just simplifies and makes it just is much easier to match that aesthetic. So
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I know things are happening so quickly on a technological level. I remember hearing an interview where Joe Perry was in the studio with like his like rig and then like all the digital stuff, and he couldn't tell the difference, and it was kind of like almost like a siren heard around the world where it's like Joe Perry can't tell, let's do it, let's go all digital.
Yeah.
And it's like when like when the guys that have been using like are not only using great equipment, but they can afford the salaries of those who can carry it. When they make the changes, you're kind of like, okay, wow, it's time. We can do this.
yeah, for sure. And there's just like a huge practicality to it. With the Kemper, the cool thing is that you're still playing through, actual amp modeled sounds. Like that's my amp that I just, made a profile of and put on there, because the rest of them don't feel right to me because they're not my amp. So that's the nice thing that I like about that. And, I can play here in the middle of the night. I can be recording stuff. For touring, again, it's a huge help. I still think, though, that real instruments and amps have a place in the studio in a lot of ways. Like
They're just heavy.
Add character. Yeah, they're just really heavy and don't always act the way you want. But I mean, given an unlimited like touring budget, I would definitely bring a lot more of that back in when you've got people who can take care of that and you're not, sweating it.
In regards to your sound, as you mentioned, dancing around pedals and stuff like that, you seem to have a very specific taste as to how you want to sound, what you like. How did you find, like, is this in all your life that you're very like specific towards things that you like and stuff, or with music in particular, have you found a way to find your sound?
I think that's a thing that most musicians find. I guess maybe not but probably everybody does that, even people who don't use effects and stuff like that. It's just like you've got a sound in your head that you want, that you don't have yet. And in some ways it's like, delusional, because sometimes you trick yourself into thinking you want something and you don't really need it. But for me, some of the overdrives that I use is just like this kind of specific kind of crunchy sound that I wanted that I couldn't get otherwise, and spent a long time searching for them. And yeah, otherwise it once in a while, like the Pog comes along where you didn't even know a guitar could sound like that, and then you plug it in and you're like inspired to play something entirely different, which is, ultimately what an effect should do. And that's kind of the rule that I had to hold myself to eventually is like, if it doesn't make you play differently, you can't have it, because otherwise you're going to get pedals for never stop.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of the Pog and also Morning Light as an album, I have to admit, the guitar solo at the end of that was one of those, you mentioned AC/DC before, but it's one of those solos for me where it's like, oh, that's good. And it's one of those, you put the song on repeat. For me, it's sometimes you hear specific sounds and just a solo that's just technically awesome, but also very like a Brian May solo in like a Queen song where it's so fitting. That was really cool. I really liked it.
Appreciate it.
Now with the new album Dreamworld, you've had EP, you've put out an album, you've become an emerging artist. You have a fan base that's growing. You've toured. What was your mentality going into this album?
Generally, I don't know if I knew on the on the outset of it. I just had started writing new songs, and I'd moved like into a new house and stuff. I'd got a different setup and things, and I'd kind of like had, it was 2 years since we'd put out the other album, and I'd had enough time to kind of be immersed in new kinds of music and come up with a new sort of sound that I was after. And so I just kind of started ripping at that and wanting to do something a little bit more alternative.
The thing, listening back to Dreamworld, it seems like the
concept of the album is a lot more cohesive as a unit. How were you writing the songs on tour? Was this a time that you taken off to write the album?
I think no. I generally can't do anything on the road. I could for this album, like in last December, I modified some stuff while I was on the road, but generally I'm kind of too tired and shitty to try and do any, like, write a new part. But yeah, I in terms of cohesion, that's just something I learned and adapted to over time. I used to, like, I listened to so many different kinds of music that I thought everybody listened to music the way that I did, and you'd just be like down to, like, hear a Beatles song right now, and then you'll hear, like, an indie pop song over here, and then, you know, maybe you'll listen to some Queens of the Stone Age and listen to something heavy. But then it kind of took me some time to realize that, like, it's much more impactful to commit to a certain aesthetic and a certain sound for an album, and not try and make it sound like a jukebox, which, you know, people might disagree with, I guess, in some sense. But yeah, I think it does, like, it just contributes to, like, making a statement. And it did, like, after writing all these songs, it took, like, a bit of time to understand what that statement really was, you know. But it is, like, you know, it encapsulates, like, my, like, thought processes in a lot of ways for a year and a half or so, and so they are connected.
What's it like to write an album with a year and a half of experience in comparison to your earlier releases where you might have had, you know, more life to live, in a sense?
I think in some senses easier because you have, like, honed your craft a little bit more. And so in that sense, I think it kind of helped with output. And comparatively, for Dreamworld, there was a lot more time than there was for Morning Light, which I really enjoyed having the time to change some parts and just let the songs kind of breathe for a bit and then go back to them and then realize, you know, you need to change this part or that. So that really helped, I think. But
did you record the album here in Toronto?
Yeah, we did. Some of it was done in the house here. The drums were done at Noble Street. Vocals in London, actually, at Charter House. Where else were we? Oh, and then we did a bunch in Dan Broadbeck's mixing studio at his house as well, with his hounds. So
that's cool.
Time.
Oh, sorry.
No sweat.
Now, so the album, probably, how long did it take in total?
To make, I honestly can't even remember. I think we did it over the course of about a month, and then mixing for, I don't know, a couple weeks or a month or something like that. But
so you guys are really, like, chugging along.
Yeah, we don't diddle around in the studio all that much. Like, the drums, I had booked 2 days, and we got almost everything done in the first day. Tommy's really good behind the kit.
What's your relationship with the band with writing songs?
I write them, demo them, and then basically people learn parts and modify a little bit. Obviously, they're far more talented at their instruments than I am, so there are ways that parts can be played a bit better. But yeah, generally, like, the aesthetic is laid out, and that's kind of what helps with the cohesion, I think. Is having that vision from the outset, and definitely having, like, the demo to compare to, as, like, a snapshot of what it should look like.
So as a unit, you guys are usually behind the songs, like you're all together on it.
Not from a writing standpoint, but, like, from a
belief standpoint, and, like, you've got good material.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the boys would very much tell me if the song was shit, and
cool.
No.
It's like that can be. I mean, I've been in rooms where there's been a 4-hour argument about a kick drum pattern, and you know, I know those things happen, but it's like you guys have always come across as being unified, and I mean, perception is always different than.
Yeah, I can't say that everybody agrees with every decision, but there's just an understanding that I'm going to make the decision, it being my song, and I think the guys have grown to respect that in a lot of ways. And there are some
things that I'll be receptive to, and there's some that I'll be really stubborn about because, you know, I wrote it in a specific way. I've been listening to the demo, and like when I go through and demo a song, I'll try like 5 different drum beats by the time, you know, the songs come about, or I'll have played like, you know, 5 or 10 different bass lines to try and find the one that I like. So by the time the demo's made, a lot of that kind of fiddling around has already been done.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess, I mean, that can be frustrating for them at times for sure too, because they're like, what if we tried this? And I'm like, I tried that. I did, you know. But, you know, just something for me to work on as well, to try and be understanding of that, you know, as well, because people aren't privy to that entire process all the time.
Yeah, coming from a rhythm, being in a rhythm section, it kind of is, it's difficult sometimes to, I don't want to say toe the line, but understand that the songwriter has deeper perspective of the song. Kind of be difficult to swallow at times, but it's good that you have a band that understand like what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, it is helpful, and that's just like professionalism in a certain sense, and yeah, and sometimes you're wrong, but that's why I try and make informed decisions. I like play those instruments not as well as either of them, but if I didn't play drums whatsoever, if I didn't play bass, I would find it a lot harder to tell somebody,
yeah,
you know, that's not the part. It's just like being fluent with those instruments, I think, gives you a lot more perspective.
Absolutely. So with this album, you've released a music video for Dreamworld so far?
We did a live session with Dreamworld.
That's
actually
right,
today, Shadow Kids, the video is coming out.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And so now you're releasing show dates that you're doing.
Yep.
You've started to play shows in support of Dreamworld.
Mm-hmm.
And how you'll be touring this fall.
Yep.
Whereabouts will you be going?
We're going all the way out to the West Coast again. We'll go to Victoria and back. And lots of Ontario dates that we play regularly, but going out there to support our radio efforts, and hoping that goes well.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Luke. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for the chat.
No problem.
Alrighty, take care.
Can I walk you home? I don't wanna be alone today. And this electric feeling running through my bones, I don't want it to go away. I keep my heart on a tight leash, but I know you're gonna get me. 'Cause something about you got me wearing it on my sleeve. And this electric feeling running through my bones, I don't want it to go away. 'Cause I've been looking for you all my life, and you came out of nowhere and knocked me off of my feet. You know that I was blindsided by the best thing that could happen. I can't believe it happened to me. It happened to me. I thought I knew what I wanted until you walked in my room. I had eyes on the future, and now they're only on you. And this electric feeling running through my bones, I don't want it to go away. 'Cause you came out of nowhere and knocked me off of my feet. You know that I was blindsided by the best thing that could happen. I can't believe it happened to me. It happened to me. And this electric feeling running through my bones, I don't want it to go away. 'Cause you came out of nowhere happened to me. I can't believe that you came out of nowhere and knocked me off of my feet. You know that I was blindsided by the best thing that could happen. I can't believe it happened to me. It happened to me.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 2 with Luke Roes is in the books. Again, I'd like to thank Luke Roes for being a great podcast interview, but also having me over to his house to record the podcast. When I had when I had the idea of doing this, the idea originally was to have people over to my apartment and kind of keep it uniform. Beggars can't be choosers, and Luke had kind of just designed his own studio in his house too, so he was happy to have me over, and I'd like to thank him for his engineering skills. You know, I think, you know, as we continue along doing this podcast, we'll kind of find, you know, what works and, you know, continue find like our stride, let's say. But I really did appreciate, you know, being at Luke's place and having him behind the desk. So with this podcast, we have our website, we have our Facebook page, but we also have our email, and that's all about the song podcast at gmail.com. If you have anything that you want to comment on, you have a guest that you think would be a really good idea to have on the podcast, please let me know. Send me an email. I look forward to hearing from you and anything that you have to say. So again, Ivory Hours, Luke Roes, episode 2 from Manila. And we're going into the pool to swim right now. Thank you very much for listening. And we'll have episode 3 up for you in the next week. So until then, take care.